What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here, and we did it. We freaking did it. The Eagles report to training camp today, first practice tomorrow. We have officially made it to football season. In the past few weeks, I don't know about you, but it's been pretty tough for me. I was starting to struggle as the summer stretched on, and I was just ready for football. I was ready for contact. I was ready for everything that comes with football season, and we have officially made it. So today, as the Eagles start to open up training camp and open up practices, let's take a look at the roster and some guys who could be on the bubble going into this season and could be on the wrong side of the 53-man cut. So I've got three people on the offense that we'll take a look at, three people on the defense we'll take a look at. But before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe. We've been saying it all summer. Since the draft, we've been seeing the numbers go up. So for a lot of you, this is the first time you actually get to hear Kevin and I talk about football. Regular shows every week, interviews every week, and then obviously game reactions, in this case, training camp reactions coming your way on YouTube all fall long. So let's get into it. Like I said, three people on offense, three people on defense. Let's take a look. These guys could be on the wrong side of the 53. Let's start on offense, and let's start with the running back position. The first guy I have is Trey Sermon. Now, Sermon is a popular name, came from the 49ers, originally from Ohio State, so big name value. He was named by Nick Sirianni in terms of like guys that could produce this year when they were doing exit interviews this past season and talking about the running back position in whole. And this was heading into free agency and if they could make a splash on a big name guy who was going to be a free agent. They didn't really make a splash, but Sermon could still be on the wrong side of this. He's been their like kind of project, and they thought at some point he could contribute, but there's just too many names in the backfield at this point for him to do so. DeAndre Swift comes in, Rashad Penny comes in, and yes, these guys are only here on 1 year deals, so I think Sermon's probably going to end up being one of those practice squad guys, but does he go practice squad or does he try to go somewhere else? I think there's definitely the potential there. It's just really hard for me to see him getting carries in a crowded backfield of Penny, Swift, Gainwell, who I think will end up being the most productive back in the backfield, and then obviously Boston Scott as well. So those four guys seem very solidified, which makes carrying a fifth running back really hard to do. So I think Sermon is just the odd man out, even though I think they had high expectations for him. Now, the second guy, this one might be more of a fan one than a team one. This is a guy that I think the fan perception of him and the team perception of him are a little bit different. He's a lot more favorable in the team perception compared to fan perception, and that's Britton Covey. So he is the punt returner, and I think people, honestly, I think people just aren't a fan of his because of the way that he gets absolutely blown up on these punt returns. But in terms of like punt returns, punt return yardage, everything like that, he was actually above average in terms of just punt return average and stuff like that. Didn't really make any turnovers and didn't muff any punts. So I think teams really look at that, especially in this day and age where special teams continues to be less and less of a factor, especially on kickoffs where you just kick it out of the back of the end zone. So they really just want a guy back there who isn't going to screw up and give the other team the ball at their 25 on a muffed punt. So I think the team's pretty favorable of Covey, but I do know Devin Allen is on this team, the world-class sprinter. They've been trying to turn this guy from a sprinter into a football player. Returner would obviously be his position if you get him on kick returns, get him on punt returns, and just let him unleash like he's on the track. So I think the fan perception of Covey is they want a different punt returner. They want to move on from this. And I know the team would love for Devin Allen to kind of make this transformation, but I think it'll be an interesting summer to see if Devin Allen really is a football player or if he's just going to be this track star and kind of just like unique situation. But who knows? Listen, we turned a rugby player into our starting left tackle, and that worked out pretty well. So let's turn the sprinter and the 110-meter hurdles into our punt returner and see how that works. So maybe Covey's on the bubble. I think that's more of a fan thing than a team thing, though. The third guy on offense. Now, this kind of comes into play with Covey, and that guy is Greg Ward Jr. Greg Ward has been just a guy. He's been through a lot of chapters on this team. He's been around since the Carson Wentz era and really was the most reliable target at points during like 2020 and 2021. I just feel like it's probably reached his expiration date with this team, and it's another position just like Sermon at wide receiver. We talked about him at running back where big name, productive, has potential, but it just doesn't seem to be a fit because there's other names in the room. So obviously, you've got AJ Brown, you've got Devontae Smith, you've got Quez Watkins. Those three are pretty solidified, even though people are down on Quez Watkins after last season. But still, it's very solid. And then you've got Olamide Zaccheaus, who they brought in, and I think fans are going to be pretty excited about him. I think he is an upgrade over Zach Pascal, although Pascal kind of gives you blocking and special teams. Zaccheaus is more of just going to be able to stretch the field, add speed to your offense, more big plays, another weapon for Jalen Hurts, who was an accurate deep ball thrower last year. So there's 4 right there. And then Covey, if he's your returner, technically counts as your 5th wide receiver. So if you have those 5, it kind of turns Greg Ward, like Sermon, into this practice squad guy. But does Ward want to go somewhere else and see if he can be wide receiver 4 on another team? Because he was able to do so for the Eagles at points. And I say wide receiver 4 as if in 2020, 2021, even Jalen Hurts' first year when they went 9-8, if he wasn't a reliable target that they were using constantly. So I think he might be in a position where his expiration date may have just come up in Philly and he could go somewhere else, get more playing time, make a 53 man, and it might be over for him here. So those are the guys that I have on offense. Now, let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. I think these names kind of a little bit more interesting for people. The first one I have is Davion Taylor. I was very critical of this pick when it happened, and maybe that was just how he ended up on this list, is because I can't get my biases out of my brain. But somebody who couldn't play football because of, I know it was his mother's religious reasons. He couldn't play high school football on Friday nights, and then, didn't get a lot of time there in Colorado, and now has been hurt multiple times as an Eagle as they're trying to develop him into a linebacker. To me, it's just like, okay, how many years are we going to do this where he has potential? You want him to get on the field, but he can't because of one reason or another. And recently, as he's been in the NFL, it's been injury. And also, they haven't been able to trust him on the field because they're still teaching him the game. And it's really hard to teach somebody who's on IR. Now, linebacker is a pretty weak position for the Eagles. If we are looking at positions that are weak links going into the season, I would absolutely say linebacker. I'm a huge fan of Nakobe Dean. I think it'll work out. I think he's just a natural born leader, natural born linebacker, natural born tackler. He's the guy who is the green dot on your defense, and you're totally fine with that. He's I hope he ends up being like a captain of the defense. So I think he'll start. And they brought in some guys over the offseason too. So I think Sean Bradley is going to make the team because he's been so solid on special teams. And I think they really like him in that position. They brought in Nicholas Morrow. They brought in Christian Ellis. So I think Nicholas Morrow will probably get the starting nod next to Nakobe Dean. But it's like, okay, at this weak position, if Davion Taylor isn't really sticking out amongst these guys, and even Nakobe Dean, who's in year 2, we have high expectations for him, but we haven't really seen a ton from him. So if you're not even able to make plays and make an impact over guys like this, I just don't ever think it's going to happen. That's why I think Taylor might be the odd man out, even in a weak linebacker class that the Eagles have. All right. Now, this one is interesting because I saw it on somebody else's list. David Zangaro, great reporter for the Eagles, covers the team. He did like a prediction of cracking the 53-man roster. And one of the guys that he mentioned who could be on the wrong side was Greedy Williams. And I found that interesting because I just assumed that he was going to make the team and be a good veteran backup at the cornerback position. So obviously, it was a tumultuous run here in the offseason, but James Bradberry and Darius Slay are both back. It didn't look like that way for a while. It didn't even seem that way during the season last year that both of those guys would be back, but they are. So they're there. Kelee Ringo, I think, is the key here. I think if Kelee Ringo solidifies himself as a solid backup corner, Greedy Williams may get cut. But I think the plan with Ringo is to see where he could play in terms of corner or safety. So I don't necessarily know if it's one or the other with Greedy Williams or Kelee Ringo. I would assume both make the team, but Dave Zangaro covers his team, has more access than me. So if he's saying that this guy could be on the bubble, I'm tending and trending to believe it. Now, Josh Joby, Zach McPherson seem to be 2 projects that they have invested in. I think McPherson would make the team. So maybe you have a situation like that. And then obviously Avonte Maddox is your nickel slot corner. So I really think the Greedy Williams one opened my eyes because it was one where I was just assuming he'd be on the team this year. And you just wanted that veteran backup in case Slay or Bradberry went down. But But I guess it kind of depends on how they feel about Ringo in camp. So again, another training camp battle to watch, which will be interesting. Now, this one, I'm counting it as defense, but this is as special teams as it gets. But what's sticking out in my mind is how it impacted the defense, especially in the Super Bowl. The guy that I have in mind here, Aaron Siposs, the punter. So Siposs got hurt last year, if you remember, is that crazy play in in the Giants game where a slow starting game for the Eagles. They got going. Siposs takes off, hurts his ankle. He doesn't come back to the Super Bowl, and then in the Super Bowl, kind of just was not effective. Couldn't punt deep. It gave the Chiefs a return all the way down into the Eagles side of the field into the red zone. The Chiefs score a touchdown. And I think since that point, it's been the worst kept secret that the Eagles are looking to upgrade at punter. So they brought in a guy over the season. They brought in Ty Zentner. I don't know a ton about him. I'm not going to pretend here to be a punter expert. But they are bringing in competition for Siposs. And again, this was the worst kept secret that they might be looking to upgrade at punter, and the proof was in the pudding there in the Super Bowl. It's one of the factors that cost them that Super Bowl in the second half is they just didn't have the punter necessary. So that is a position to look at if they bring somebody in during camp or somebody else excels in camp somewhere else, and they poach a punter from another team, bring him in before the season, and replace Siposs with him. So that's it. Those are the 6 guys. I can't wait for camp. There's going to be a lot of great battles. You feel good about a lot of positions here. So biggest thing, no injuries, no injuries, no injuries. If we're talking about some of these guys on the list, that means somebody else got hurt. So this won't be the last time you talk about some of these guys this year. Is they're playing their backup role, they're doing it well, and all the starters are healthy. It's exciting to be back. We'll be back with our regular show this week. Again, make sure to like and subscribe. Happy to be back. Happy to have football to talk about. Let's get into training camp.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm going to need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds versus Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Yep. Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things. I got 2 phones. Upset alert. Upset alert. I might go insane.
I think you're already there.
There's no hope. Hope is gone.
If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
Bob Hope.
I'm going to drink bleach.
That is
be the team you promised me you were going to be this year. This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.